Recently, Matt Walsh appeared on Dr. Phil arguing transgender ideology, arguing that a woman is an adult human female, and there were two non-binary individuals arguing against him. Matt Walsh asked them to define the word woman. They could not. Though they couldn't define the word, they deflected by saying, it's not my place to define the word. And thus, woman is simply a word that describes anyone who identifies as a woman, which is, I'm sorry to say, it doesn't make any sense. You can't use the definition of the word in the definition. Now, for most people and throughout American and human history, for at least as long as English has been around, the word woman has been used to refer to an adult human female. Now, initially, I believe it was werman. A werman was an adult human male, and a wifman was an adult human female. This is back in Old Germanic. And eventually that evolved. The wer or where in front of man dropped off, and it just became man as a general reference to a male, and wifman became woman, which was just a general reference to an adult human female. Now that we've cleared up some language components here, we have an interesting story, a couple. The first is that transgender women slam female-only social networking app Giggle for using facial recognition software that excludes them. But CEO doubles down and insists that it's not a place for men claiming to be women. No, I want to make sure this story is clear because it's a very deep-seated cultural issue that we have. The CEO has said, Giggle is an app for females. That means trans men are allowed on the platform. But the trans women community is viewing this more like an affirmation attempt. The way they see it is this facial recognition software, when you open the app, it takes a picture of your face. It'll then say, you're a male, you're a female. Now, of course, there can be false positives. There are some females who are particularly masculine, and they may get rejected. And there are some males who are particularly feminine, and they may get accepted. But some trans women are taking pictures and saying, this is it, am I going to be accepted into this community? Because they want the computer to say, objectively, we view you as a female, not even a woman. The issue here is that the LGBT activists that are going after this software app and the CEO have changed what she said. The CEO says it's for females only. The LGBTQ activists say it's a woman only because they're conflating the two things. This shows us that we have very serious cultural problems that have nothing to do with transgender ideology, or I should say, it has, well, to an extent, yes. It has nothing really to do with whether or not someone is trans, because there are certainly conservative trans people, Blair White, for instance. It has everything to do with tribe and valuing our neighbors. What I see from this story is that the activists that are trying to break into this app by trying to bypass their facial recognition, they're saying, we don't care about you. We don't care about your community. We don't care about your desires and what you want. We just want access. Don't keep us out. Well, the CEO is saying she's going to keep them out. It's not for women. It's for females. There's an interesting question here, though. First, let me ask you this. Whose side are you on? Do you support the female CEO saying it's not a place for men claiming to be women? Or do you support the transgender women saying that trans women are women, so they should be allowed in a female space? I find it interesting because I'm not so sure I agree with the idea of racially or gender segregated social media platforms. It's tough. Do we really want that? Well, I mean, maybe. I don't know. I don't like the idea that there's an app only for, black people. I wouldn't like the idea of an app only for white people, which I'm sure exists in some form, but certainly not on the Play Store on Apple. I don't like segregation, but of course the left does. So this is an interesting conundrum. The left will say that it's okay that gay men have Grindr. They'll say it's okay that, black people have their own apps and that trans people have their own apps. But if you are a female, be it a trans man or a biological cis female, whatever, not allowed, not acceptable. The CEO makes an interesting point. The people who are trying to gain access are all teen boys who are complaining about this. How do they know? They can see the photos of them trying to gain access. When you sign up and it takes a picture of your face, they can see a bunch of teen boys trying to get in a female-only social media space. But it's an interesting question. So I'm drawing suspense a little bit on purpose to give you time to comment. Whose side are you on? Female-only spaces, no males need apply, or spaces that are inclusive for everybody? Which brings me to this other story, which is a bit conflicting. Women-only gym areas violate discrimination law, according to Connecticut Supreme Court ruling. Religious, LGBTQ, and civil rights groups all submitted briefs to the court regarding the case. They say outright, a space that says women only is not allowed. In which case, under this ruling, should it expand around the U.S., Giggle wouldn't be able to operate here properly anyway. Now, I think they're based in Queensland. It's an Australian company. It wouldn't be able to operate here because in any capacity, this argument is moot. Trans women should get access to the space. Well, yeah, biological males should have as well, because you can't discriminate on the basis of sex. An interesting question then, isn't it? Trans women only want it so that trans women can get access to the female app. The CEO wants it so only females, but it seems like, at least if we're to operate in the US, the courts will probably rule you can't do that. Now, it's interesting. The CEO points out that Grindr, women aren't signing up for Grindr. They're not trying to get access to it because they realize it's for gay men. Why is it then that males are trying to get access to this platform? That's her point. Well, let's read a little bit about this story and see what's going on, and we'll ask these questions. But the reason I asked you to comment on what your view is of who is correct is because I then want to show you that the courts have said you can't discriminate. So where do you stand now? Do you agree with the courts that there should not be ladies' night at bars where women get special discounts, or women's only gyms where it's a facility that bars people of the male persuasion, they're not allowed in, or a mobile app that says female only? Sorry, which side are you on? I think it's a hard question, to be honest. Because then you got to ask yourself questions about bathrooms. Should there be a bathroom only for women? We have those. Interesting conundrum, isn't it? But let me know what you think. I don't have all the answers, all right? So let's read. Giggle, a social network only for females, which launched in early 2020, has since been the subject of complaints from trans women who told The Verge that their requests to join have been denied by the app's facial recognition system because their features were not feminine enough. However, Giggle's CEO, Saul Grover, who is based in Queensland, has doubled down, claiming there is no space on the app for men claiming to be women. Grover, who does not believe trans women are female. No, hold on. Trans women are not female. That is not to deride anybody or to insult anybody. Trans women are people who are born biologically male and then want to transition to identify as women. They want to identify as adult human females, but they're not female, which is why we say trans women. Now, certainly they should be afforded every right as everybody else, that I understand. And it's not a statement about them as individuals, just trying to point that out. You can't be female and a trans woman. If you were female and you transitioned to identify as a male, you would be a trans man. The point of woman and man in those words is to say trans woman is someone identifying and presenting as female who is not biologically female. That's how the language works. Quote, the fact is, women of color are on Giggle. Giggle is used by women of every race, religion, and culture. The quality that Giggle users have in common is that they are female. And this here is the Saul Grover, the CEO, a female. We can see this. They say verification. Feel secure knowing our biometric software only allows girls inside. I'm pretty sure we've talked about this app in the past. And there was a wave of dudes trying to see if the facial recognition actually worked. The AI Giggle uses face recognition. The AI Giggle uses for face recognition works by analyzing the bone structure of its members, meaning that individuals with masculine features could be prevented from creating an account on the app. Allegations of transphobia surrounding Giggle first surfaced in 2020. However, the story has emerged again after LGBTQ publication Pink News approached Grover for comment on an article about the controversy. An unnamed freelance journalist, unnamed freelance, shut up. Grover replied saying, Giggle is a social networking app for females. Males are excluded from the user base. There is no other specific demographic that is excluded from the app other than males. Exclusionary. Saul Grover tweeted, this is the CEO, the only reason anyone is struggling to answer what is a woman is because men are claiming to be women. That's all. Take that away, and what is a woman remains as clear as it has always been. Nothing has changed. We're still just adult human females. Evolution hasn't tricked us. I am not obligated to adhere to gender identity, and it is no one's human right to force me. How do you define the word woman? Matt Walsh asked that question of some non-binary activists on Dr. Phil, and they could not give him an answer other than a circular answer. I think it's very easy. A woman is an adult human female. A man is an adult human male. A trans woman is an adult human, is a male human who identifies and seeks to present or identifies as female despite not being biologically female. I mean, these are simple definitions, not meant to disrespect anybody, but there's a reason why we put the trans qualifier in front of woman. If woman doesn't mean biological female, then why would you need to use the word at all? If you can't define what a woman is, why would you need to use the word at all? You can say feminine, I guess. I have no idea. On the Dr. Phil show, which was really interesting, this professor said that gender identity and biological sex are different. That just because someone is born a girl doesn't mean they'll want to vacuum. I'm not kidding. That's what was actually said. I don't think that vacuuming has anything to do with being female. But you see the problem here with these activists. They associate behavior with biological sex. I don't think classical liberals do that. There's jokes. Now, I'll put it this way. We like to say that the woke are white supremacists with guilty consciences. And I think that's a fair point. They say horrible things about people based on race. They think white people are privileged and superior in some ways, at least politically, than other races. And they reject saying that. Don't say that we're superior, that we think we're superior. Yo, if you're a white person and you think you are granted and afforded special rights and privileges, you are saying that in society, white people are superior. You just don't like that they are. That's a fair assessment. If you don't agree with that, well, that's your linguistic issue. So I wonder when it comes to gender, if there's a similar thing, that these activists, these professors, for instance, are sexists with guilty consciences. What I mean by that is, I think women can do anything a man can do. Maybe not to the same extent, right? Like, on average, women are going to be shorter, have lower bone density, have wider hips, have harsher Q angles. That's the femur to the knee. And this will result in different things. Men can't have babies. Women can have, males, right? Men can't have babies, women can. When a professor comes out and says vacuuming is inherently related to biological sex, and some people reject that, they are telling you outright they are sexists. Yo, vacuuming is new. It did not exist a long time ago. It is not like 1,000 years ago. They were like, one day we will invent the vacuum and that will affirm that you're female. No, anybody can vacuum. So when they come out and they make these statements that behaviors determine whether or not someone feels comfortable with their genitals, it's just wrong. It's just wrong. I think it shows that they're sexist. There are many people who are biologically male who like makeup. And they don't want to be females. They like dollhouses. It's fine. Play with the dollhouse. There are women who like playing sports. That's great. By all means. But adult human males will never have babies. They will never birth a child. Suppose there can be some point in human scientific advancement where they can be transformed through genetic manipulation or something. I don't know. Perhaps there are surgeries. Perhaps there's implants. The point is, naturally, without medical intervention, adult human males will not be birthing children, and adult human females are the ones who will. When you take a look at the male pelvis, a lot of people have talked about implanting a uterus into a male so they can have a baby. It would still require a C-section because the male pelvis is not large enough to birth a child. It's just take a look at the pelvis. So the differences exist. When it comes to these arguments, the left typically has a view that a woman's genitals directly correlate with the colors they wear, the clothing they wear, and if they vacuum or not. If someone has male parts and they want to wear a dress, it doesn't mean they want to have female parts. Those are not the same thing. It's all been conflated. It's all been mixed and mashed together. Let's read a little bit more about this story. No males are encouraged to join Giggle. Giggle is clearly stated as being for females. It would be lovely, however, if male people respected female spaces and left them alone. You see, this is where we can move on for the discussion about the woke left and talk about the classical liberals and those who believe in freedom of association and anti-segregation. Curious then, if courts in Connecticut, and many courts have upheld, that gender segregation violates our Civil Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act, then how do you defend, a CEO saying females only? In fact, women-only gym areas, by banning them, would allow trans women to use these spaces too. And who draws the line on what qualifies as a woman's space? During Occupy Wall Street, there was a rift. They created caucuses, voting bodies based on identity and work. There was the Women's Caucus, and then there was also the Women's Caucus with trans women. Because the Women's Caucus was believed that trans women being male would not understand their experience and should not be in their voting space. So then a new group was formed of people who said, okay, well, we should allow trans women and women into this group because trans women are women. It shows you that early on, the left had radical feminists and trans inclusionary radical feminists, and they were at odds with each other. Now, TERF is used as a derogatory term, and these people are typically excised and associated with the right, which is why I find this story actually interesting. I'd assume that the CEO of this female-only app will get a lot of support from the right, saying there should be female-only spaces if they so choose. But many on the right are anti-segregation. Tell me what you think. I've talked about this quite a bit because I do find it fascinating. When it comes to racial segregation, clearly wrong, plainly wrong. Why? Well, a person from, Somalia has the same parts as a person from the United States, if they're male or female. Thus, they'll be using the same bathrooms or whatever. There's also the issue that no matter where someone comes from and no matter what their race is, there is a higher likelihood of violence against women from males, period. Now, certainly, you can look in the United States and see some racial demographics are more likely to commit crime than others. We can associate that with historical racism, poverty. I think that's the generally more fair assessment. And we can talk about systemic racism and how it feeds into this. But to put it simply, it's hard to track perfectly because of the way race works. As I've mentioned in the previous video, someone from Somalia will be called black. Someone from Haiti will be called black. When both of those people are here in the US, they'll both be called African American, even though Haiti isn't in Africa. They'll say both of these people are African American and lump those stats in all with each other. And the same is true for white people. A Polish person and an Irish person are thousands of miles apart and very different, but because they look white, they'll be called Caucasian. And neither group is from the Caucasus region, which I find very, very hilarious that they do that. So the racial thing becomes way too complicated. You can't do that. If they said Polish people are people of color, that thing we talk about with Luke on the show, yes, they do. Woke people say that Slavic white people are actually people of color, whatever. Determining that is actually more difficult than gender. You can, for the most part, in most circumstances, determine someone's gender just by looking at them. You take a child and you put them in front of a black person and you say, what country or region does this person hail from? They might just guess Africa, and they could be very, very wrong because it could be, Haiti. And what part of Africa? Africa is massive. But you put a male or female, a black male or female, a white male or female, or whatever, and ask a child, is this a boy or a girl, male or a female? And they're likely going to get it right. So I think that's one argument as to why we have gender segregation. Because females have very different bodies 98% of the time than males, and so we separate these spaces. There was one story I covered years ago in the UK where they created unisex changing rooms. Assaults against women skyrocketed. Why? The males who were committing these crimes against females now had greater opportunity, and greater opportunity resulted in a higher likelihood of crimes against females. So women were going into these locker rooms. I think it was like a pool. I think it might have been a changing room, and males were attacking them. And that's another reality. Males are more likely to be the ones attacking females. So when you have a CEO of a company who says they want a female-only space, perhaps that's it. Perhaps they don't want to be around a male of any sort. I find it interesting, that during Occupy Wall Street, you had women's-only therapy tents. Somebody had raped several women in the camp, including a trans man. That's right. Someone who was female but identified as male was raped during Occupy Wall Street in the camp. So they created a female-only tent. They created a women's trauma tent. But here's where it gets interesting. They said trans women should be allowed in there because they're women. Several women got mad saying these are males and they were scared to be around males. They were traumatized. They said, no, it's not fair. A trans woman is a woman. But at the same time, the trans man, who they say trans men are men, was also allowed in that space. Why? Because she's female. Therein lies the conundrum here. There's a prominent pro skater who was born female, one of the best, competes against females, came out as trans, was still competing against females, though. I mean, if you are born female but believe you're a man or identify as a man, wouldn't you then enter the male division? The issue was that these biological females don't hold a candle to the biological males in terms of ability in the males' competition. I'm not saying it to be mean. It's just a reality you can see with your own eyes. It's like Serena and Venus and Serena Williams, who are the best of the best. They challenged. They said they could beat any male who was ranked 200 or below, and they lost some guy who showed up drunk smoking cigarettes, and he was ranked like 213 or something. So, look, there are harsh realities to everything. How we draw the line to protect people's rights and give people the respect they deserve when they deserve it, those are the difficult questions. Comment below. Let me know what you think. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.